Jessa Faulkner was ankle-deep in mud when her assistant shouted, "He's here!" And that was the exact moment her entire life was about to flip upside down. She wiped her hands on her jeans, squinting under the afternoon sun. The outdoor shoot was set in the wild green hills just outside Napa Valley, with golden light washing over tall grass and a scenic vineyard backdrop. She had booked the land months ago for a high-profile client whose name had been kept under wraps until this morning. All she knew was that he was important and rich enough to buy the vineyard if he wanted. Jessa didn't care about money. She cared about composition, light, and getting the perfect shot. Her assistant, Mia, bounced nervously on her heels, eyes wide. "Jessa." "That's a Rolls-Royce." Jessa followed her gaze as the sleek black car came to a smooth stop beside the gravel path. The door opened, and a man stepped out, tall and sharp-jawed, dressed in a tailored navy suit with a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. No tie. Effortlessly expensive. The man looked straight at Jessa, like he knew exactly who she was. "Hi," he said, walking toward her, his voice low and smooth. "I'm Alder Finn. I believe you're in charge of making me look good today." Jessa blinked. "You're the client, guilty." He smiled, not a smug smile, just confident, like he was used to being the most important person in any room. "Sorry for being late. My pilot got held up leaving New York." "Pilot?" she echoed, her brain trying to catch up. "Private jet." "It's a whole thing," he said casually, glancing at the setup. "This is stunning." Jessa cleared her throat and forced herself into work mode. "Great, well, the lighting is perfect right now. We'll be shooting right through golden hour." "I'll walk you through the plan." Alder nodded and followed her, hands in his pockets, taking everything in like he owned it, which, honestly, he probably did. The shoot started simple, him standing against the vineyard rose, jacket over his shoulder. Then seated on a vintage wooden crate, laughing at something Mia said. Then a close-up, his jawline catching the light just right, his eyes locked on Jessa through the lens. "You look like you've done this before," she said, adjusting her camera. "I've had my picture taken." "Never like this, though." He tilted his head, watching her. "You're not afraid of telling me what to do." "I boss billionaires around for a living," she replied, instantly regretting it. "I mean, I didn't mean," he laughed, genuinely. "You're right, I am a billionaire." "But I like that you don't care." She quickly looked away. "Let's reset over by the vineyard wall." They moved locations, and she kept herself busy with angles and lighting to avoid getting caught up in his attention. But Alder made it hard to ignore him. He asked questions, two real ones. About her work, her studio in San Francisco, how she got started. "You always wanted to be a photographer?" he asked while she changed lenses, "since I could hold a camera." "Your work's incredible," he said. "It's why I chose you. You didn't even know me." "I saw your series in Architectural Visions last year, the one with the abandoned mansions. It made me feel something. Not many things do." That caught her off guard. "You read Architectural Visions? I fund it," he said simply. Of course he did. They wrapped the shoot just as the sunset hit its deepest gold. Jessa was packing up when Alder walked over, holding 2 paper coffee cups from the cooler. He handed her one. "You're not what I expected," he said. She raised a brow. "What did you expect? A photographer who wanted to impress me. A woman who'd pretend not to care but still try to get close. You're not pretending." "I don't have time to. I'm always behind on editing." He smiled again, softer this time. "Let me take you to dinner." Jessa froze. "What? Dinner? Tomorrow night? No cameras, just us." She stared at him. "You don't even know me." "I'd like to," he said, his voice more serious now. "And I don't usually want that, but I haven't stopped looking at you since I got here." Jessa's pulse jumped. She wasn't the type to get swept up. She built her business from nothing, stayed away from drama, and especially stayed away from rich men who thought they could buy her time. But Alder didn't feel like any of that. He felt real. And somehow he looked at her like she was the only thing worth seeing. "I don't date clients," she said. "Good thing the shoot's over then." She laughed despite herself. "I'll pick you up," he said, already walking backwards toward his car. "Unless you tell me not to." She hesitated, then called out, "What kind of dinner are we talking?" He grinned. The kind where you wear something that makes you feel expensive. And then he was gone. The next night, he picked her up in a deep green Aston Martin. He opened the door for her like a gentleman from a black and white movie. The restaurant wasn't in the city, it was a private estate in the hills, candlelit tables under a pergola, a private chef, soft jazz playing in the background. "This is not dinner," she said, speechless. "It's dinner when you're me," he said, pulling out her chair. Over roasted duck and wine she couldn't pronounce, he asked about her childhood, her parents, her dreams. He didn't talk about himself much, but when he did, it was honest. "I was 22 when I sold my first company. 30 when I stopped trusting anyone." She looked up at him. "Why? Everyone wanted something, no one saw me." She did. Right then, she did, and it scared the hell out of her. After dinner, they walked through the vineyard under the stars. He stopped, looked at her, and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You still don't trust me," he said. "I don't trust easy," she whispered. "I don't either," he said, and then he kissed her slow, warm, and full of something that felt dangerously like the beginning of everything. Jessa didn't sleep that night. She also didn't stop thinking about him. Jessa didn't see Alder for 4 days. She buried herself in post-production, editing the vineyard shoot late into each night, her fingers moving faster than her thoughts, trying to outpace the way her chest twisted every time she remembered the way he'd looked at her like she was something rare. She hadn't expected anything beyond dinner. One date, one kiss, and that would be it. That was how it usually went with men like him. But Alder had left her with silence, and she didn't know why that bothered her more than it should. On the 5th morning, her studio assistant buzzed her office. "There's someone here to see you." "I'm not taking walk-ins today," Jessa called back, still adjusting the color grading on a wide-angle shot of Alder's profile. "I think you'll want to make an exception." She sighed and rolled her shoulders, walking out of the editing suite and into the main reception. And stopped cold. Alder stood in the middle of the studio's front gallery, holding a large white box in one hand and a pair of sunglasses in the other. He was dressed in a crisp black button-down, sleeves rolled up, and dark slacks that fit him like they were made for him because, knowing him, they probably were. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said, eyes sweeping the room. "You are," she said, folding her arms. "But you already knew that." "I brought peace offerings," he said, lifting the box. "Your assistant said you skipped lunch and that you like lemon tarts. I may have bought out the bakery." "You bribed my assistant?" "I negotiated," he said. Jessa narrowed her eyes, but curiosity tugged at her. "Why are you here?" "I owe you an apology," Alder said, stepping closer. "I should have called. I flew back to Manhattan the morning after dinner. It wasn't planned, and I didn't want to do it by phone." She tilted her head. "Do what? Ask if I could see you again." Jessa blinked. "You flew across the country just to ask me that?" "I was already in the air by the time I realized I didn't want to be." Something in his voice, quiet, disarmed, unsettled her more than his charm ever could. "I have a shoot in an hour," she said. "Then let me stay until you leave," he said, gesturing to the seating area. "I won't say a word, just needed to see you." She studied him. "You don't strike me as the waiting type." Alder gave a slow shrug. "I'm learning." She turned and walked back to her office. "Don't touch anything." "I wouldn't dare." 2 hours later, after the shoot wrapped in Pacific Heights, Jessa found him exactly where she left him, legs crossed, flipping through a worn edition of a photography monograph from her shelf, the pastry box untouched beside him. "You weren't kidding," she said, stepping into the gallery. "Told you I could wait." "I don't know what you're doing," she said bluntly, "but I don't have time for games." "Neither do I," he said, standing. "That's why I'm not wasting it," Jessa exhaled. "So what happens now?" "That depends on you." She stared at him, mind already racing through the list of reasons this was a terrible idea. But when he looked at her, it didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a dare. "Fine," she said. "You want to see me again?" "You can come with me to the charity gala tomorrow." Alder raised an eyebrow. "A gala?" "My cousin's organizing it. It's black tie, no press, boring food, designed to make people feel less guilty about their bank accounts." He gave a short laugh. "Sounds like my kind of crowd." "Good." Then you can blend in. The next evening, he picked her up in a sleek charcoal Maserati, stepping out in a midnight velvet tuxedo with a silver pocket square. When he saw her on the front steps in a sweeping backless navy gown and diamond drop earrings she had borrowed from her cousin, he froze for a beat. "You look like a problem I'd gladly ruin myself for," he said, offering his arm. "I told you not to charm me. I'm not." That's just the inconvenient truth. Inside the ballroom, chandeliers glittered over crystal glasses and a string quartet played something elegant near the stage. Jessa made quick introductions, keeping Alder close but watching for any sign he might bolt. He didn't. Instead, he leaned in when people spoke. He laughed at her cousin's husband's bad jokes. He even signed a silent auction bid card without blinking at the 5-figure starting price. "You're surprisingly good at this," she whispered as they stepped away from the crowd. "I've had practice pretending to belong," he said. "You make it easier." A waiter passed with champagne. Alder took 2 glasses and handed her one. "So tell me," he said as they moved toward the terrace, "what's the real reason you brought me here?" "I needed to know how you'd handle my world," she said honestly, "not the curated version. The awkward small talk, the family obligations, the fact that I don't come from anything close to your money." He leaned against the stone railing, glass in hand. "You think I care about any of that? I think it's easier to say you don't until it starts getting messy." "I don't mind messy," Alder said. "I mind fake, and you're the most real thing I've had in years." Jessa looked out over the city lights, her heartbeat too loud in her ears. "I don't know how to do this with someone like you." "Then don't do it with someone like me," he said. "Do it with me." For the first time, she let herself lean into the gravity between them. "You always talk like everything's already decided." He touched her wrist gently. "That's because when I want something, I don't wait for permission." She turned toward him, barely a breath between them. "And what exactly do you want? To be the reason you stop running from everything that might be good?" The night ended with his hand at the small of her back as he walked her to her front door. No kiss this time, just a long look like he was memorizing her. And then he said, "Let me take you somewhere this weekend. Just say yes." "Where? You'll see." She should have said no. She didn't. She said, "Pick me up Saturday." And that's how she found herself, 2 days later, stepping onto a tarmac where a sleek white jet waited under the morning sun. The crew greeted her by name. Alder waited at the base of the stairs, dark jeans, sunglasses, and a smile that looked less like conquest and more like anticipation. "Where are we going?" she asked as he took her bag. "You'll know when we land," he said. "You like control, don't you? I like surprises more." They boarded, champagne was poured, and the plane lifted into the clouds with a smooth hum. She looked at him across the aisle, warm sunlight cutting across his cheekbone, and realized something terrifying. She wasn't just intrigued anymore, she was falling. The jet touched down in Jackson Hole just as the sun crested the snow-dusted peaks. Jessa stepped off the last stair of the aircraft and was hit by the crisp, pine-laced air. She wrapped her coat tighter and turned to Alder, who had already pulled a pair of leather gloves from his coat pocket. "This is Wyoming," she said, adjusting to the sudden change in scenery. "You brought me to the mountains?" He nodded toward a waiting black SUV. "I thought you might need to breathe." She slid into the passenger seat, unsure what to say. The landscape was vast and untouched, every mile pulling her further from the city, from routine, from control. Alder didn't fill the silence. He let her look out the window as towering pines gave way to open meadows and low-lying mist. They drove for almost an hour before turning down a tree-lined road that ended at a modern lodge nestled against the edge of a frozen lake. No other buildings in sight. A man in a heavy coat greeted them by name and took their bags inside. Jessa stepped into the lodge's main room and stopped. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the lake, and a fire crackled in a stone hearth that stretched up 2 stories. The furniture was all clean lines and warm textures, cashmere throws, soft leather chairs, wood beams above them stained nearly black. She turned slowly, taking it in. "You own this," Alder shook his head. I helped design it, a friend built it. It's not on the market. Why bring me here? He took a step closer. Because I wanted to see what you'd do if the world got quiet. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Her shoulders dropped for the first time in days. Later that afternoon, they hiked up a trail behind the lodge. The snow wasn't deep, just enough to crunch beneath their boots. Jessa paused halfway up the ridge, catching her breath. You didn't strike me as the outdoors type, she said. I'm not, Alder replied, brushing a branch aside for her. But I know how to make room for things that matter. She turned, met his eyes. You keep saying things like that. Like what? Like you've already decided who I am to you. I haven't decided anything, he said, but I feel something around you I haven't felt in a long time. And I'm not pretending I don't. She looked away toward the tree line. It's easier for you to say that. You don't have to worry about what happens if it doesn't work. That's not true, Alder said quietly. I've lost things before. Things I didn't protect soon enough. They walked the rest of the trail in silence. At the summit, the land fell away into a vast valley, the lake below now a silver mirror in the soft light. Jessa pulled out her camera instinctively, capturing the view. You want time to think, Alder said behind her. I can give you that. She lowered the lens. What if I don't need time? What if I just need to trust that this isn't some elaborate illusion? Then let me earn it. Back at the lodge, a dinner was waiting: roasted venison, root vegetables, and a red wine that Alder opened himself. The chef, it turned out, was a culinary school friend of Alder's who lived off-grid most of the year. He stayed only long enough to serve before disappearing into the night with a nod. They ate by the fire, their plates balanced on a low table between them. Jessa curled her knees under her, glass in hand, studying him. You've been careful with me, she said finally. Why? I've moved too fast before, Alder admitted. I've built something beautiful with someone who didn't want the same life I did. It wrecked us both. What happened? She left. Said she didn't want to be a name in someone else's empire. And you? I let her go, but I stopped letting people close after that. Jessa set her glass down. So why now? Because you're not looking for a way in, you're looking for a way out, same as me. She didn't argue. She didn't deny it. Instead, she reached across the table, her fingers brushing his wrist. I'm terrified of all of this. So am I, he said, voice low, but I'm still here. That night, they didn't sleep in separate rooms. The next morning, Jessa woke before dawn, wrapped in the warmth of Alder's arms. She slipped out of bed and padded barefoot to the window. The sky was still dark, stars fading into the first haze of morning. She watched the lake, the stillness of it, the way the light shifted across its surface. Behind her, the bed rustled. You thinking about running? He asked, voice rough with sleep. She smiled without turning. No, not yet. He sat up, the sheet falling from his chest, and leaned his elbows on his knees. I don't want to push you. But I'm not pretending this isn't real. What if I'm not ready for something real? Alder stood, crossed the room, and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. Then we take the time. But I'm not walking away. The flight back to San Francisco was quiet, not from awkwardness, but from something settled. Jessa rested her head against the window, the clouds below them like a sea of soft white. When she opened her studio the next morning, a package was waiting on her desk. No note. Just a black velvet box. Inside was a vintage Leica camera, perfectly preserved, her dream model, and engraved on the back, for the moments you don't share with anyone else. She held it in her hands, heart pounding. Because this wasn't a grand gesture meant to impress. It was something else entirely. It meant he'd been paying attention. And that more than anything terrified her in a way she didn't know how to name. The gallery lights were dimmed, the soft hum of evening traffic filtering through the tall windows. Jessa stood at the far end of the room, arranging final prints for a private showing she hadn't told anyone about, not even Alder. The images were from her latest series, captured in the quiet space between falling for someone and surrendering to it. They were raw, unfiltered moments, a shadow falling across a cheekbone, a hand resting on a windowsill, the curve of a smile almost hidden. She hadn't planned to display them, but something had shifted. Mia peeked in from the hallway. "He's here." Jessa turned, her pulse rising. "You let him in." He brought wine, and the look on his face said he wasn't leaving without seeing you. She hesitated, then nodded. Mia disappeared, and Alder stepped into the gallery with a bottle in one hand and a look in his eyes Jessa hadn't seen before. Not heat, not charm. Something closer to vulnerability. "You're working late," he said. "I needed to finish the curation." "For the gala next week?" "No," she said, walking past him toward the prince. "For tonight." He followed her gaze, his expression shifting as he took in the photographs. "These are new. They're not for sale." "I didn't ask if they were." She waited, unsure what she wanted him to say. He moved toward one of the pieces, a black and white image of a man's profile, caught mid-turn, the light catching only the edge of his jaw. It wasn't posed. It wasn't perfect. "It was real." "That's me," he said. She didn't answer. Alder turned to her. "You didn't tell me you were shooting." "I wasn't, not officially." "How many are there?" 7, all from that weekend." He stepped closer. "You saw something in me I didn't realize I was showing." "You let your guard down," she said, folding her arms. "Even if you didn't mean to." He studied her, and for the first time he looked uncertain. "What are you doing, Jessa?" "I'm trying to decide," she said. "Whether whatever this is real enough to keep." He didn't speak right away. Then, "I've never had to prove myself to anyone, but I've never wanted to either, until you. You say things like that so easily." "It's not easy," he said, voice quiet. "When I left New York last week, I walked away from 2 major investors. One of them's threatening to pull out. The other's holding their decision until I stabilize my priorities." Their words, not mine. Jessa's breath caught. "You didn't tell me that." "I didn't want it to sound like I was trading one kind of pressure for another. This isn't about business, it's about you." She stepped back, needing space. "You're risking your company over me." "I'm risking it because I finally realized none of it matters if I don't have someone to share it with." The silence between them stretched, heavy with meaning. "I've spent years building everything alone," she said. "I don't know how to stop." "Then let me learn with you." She looked at the photo again, then at him. "I need to know this isn't just about the chase. That you're not only here because I didn't fall at your feet." "If that were true," he said, stepping forward, "I would have left after the first shoot, or after you turned down dinner, or after you told me I scare you." She didn't move. "You still do." His hand reached for hers, fingers brushing lightly. "Then let me be the kind of fear you run toward." Her eyes filled before she could stop them. "I don't want to lose myself in someone else's life." "Then don't," Alder said. "Let's build a life that belongs to us both." The moment held. And then, without a word, she moved into his arms, holding on not because she was falling, but because she'd finally landed. Later that week, the gallery buzzed with the hum of patrons, wine glasses clinking, soft music floating from the quartet in the corner. Alder stood beside her, dressed in a dark suit with a tailored cut that made him look like he belonged in every magazine cover on the wall. But he wasn't looking at the art. He was looking at her. The series had been unveiled to select collectors, but the final piece, the one Jessa hadn't shown anyone, was displayed in the far corner under a single spotlight. It was a photo of her hair wind tousled, eyes closed, caught mid-laugh at the edge of a dock in Wyoming. Natural, free, the plaque beneath it read, "The moment I knew." When Alder saw it, he turned to her. "You're showing them this?" "I wanted something honest," she said. "Something that scared me." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim velvet box. "Then let me do something that scares me," she froze. "Alder." "It's not what you think," he said, flipping it open. Inside was a delicate gold band, not a ring, but a fine bracelet with a single engraved word, "Ours." "I don't want to own you," he said. "I want to build something with you, something we both get to shape, no expectations, just us." She took the bracelet slowly, her fingers trembling as she fastened it around her wrist. "I didn't know I needed someone to see me this clearly." "That's because you've been too busy seeing everyone else." He kissed her then, right there in front of the crowd, not rushed, not showy, but full of something deep enough to silence the room. A few people clapped softly. Most simply smiled and turned away, giving them the moment. Months passed. The gallery expanded. Jessa's work was featured in an international exhibit. Alder sold one of his companies and launched a smaller, more personal venture, something tied to sustainable design and rural conservation. He called it a return to what matters. They didn't rush into anything else. No sudden moves, no elaborate announcements, but every evening she came home to the same place. And every morning she woke up to the man who'd once walked into her shoot with arrogance and left with her heart. And neither of them ever looked back. The morning was soft with fog, and the scent of rain-soaked jasmine that curled along the edge of the terrace. Jessa stood in the doorway of the Napa house, their house now, though she hadn't said it out loud yet, watching Alder pour 2 mugs of coffee in the kitchen. He moved like the space was his, barefoot in dark slacks, sleeves pushed up, hair still damp from the shower. And it was his in a way. He'd commissioned the place years back as a quiet escape, then left it untouched for so long it had become little more than a storage for expensive silence. Now it held laughter. Her shoes near the door, her camera bags on the sideboard. A cracked ceramic dish she insisted on using for keys even though he could have a custom one made in 5 minutes. He handed her a mug without speaking, and she took it with a nod. "You have that look again," he said, leaning against the island. "What look?" "The one that says you're about to tell me something you've been building up in your head for days." She took a sip before answering. "My father called." He straightened slightly. "You haven't mentioned him before." "I don't usually. We haven't spoken since I moved out at 19. He didn't like that I wasn't going to college for law or medicine. Said photography was a waste of a sharp mind." Alder's brow furrowed. "And now he saw the gallery article in the Times and the bracelet. Apparently Mom reads everything." "What did he want?" "To meet you. And to ask if I'm safe." He used that word like I'd run off with some dangerous stranger who could ruin me. Alder's mouth twitched, not quite a grin, but something deeper. "I suppose I am that stranger." "You're not anymore." He stepped closer, setting his mug beside hers. "Do you want me to meet him?" "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I think I want him to see what it looks like when someone actually chooses me." Alder's jaw tightened. "Then let's do it." The following weekend, they drove to the coast where her parents had retired. The conversation on the way there stayed light music, a few awkward jokes, a detour to a roadside market that sold fresh cherries and rosemary bread. But when they pulled into the cobbled driveway of the cottage nestled against the cliffs, Jessa's hand trembled slightly on the door handle. Alder saw it. He gently covered her hand with his. "We're not here to prove anything," he said. "We're here because you matter. That's enough." She nodded, and together they stepped out. Her father opened the door before they knocked. He was taller than Alder had expected, silver-haired, and wearing a sweater that looked like it had been patched at the elbows more than once. Her mother stood behind him, expression unreadable. "Dad," Jessa said, "this is Alder." Her father's eyes shifted to the man beside her. "So you're the one making headlines." Alder didn't flinch. "Good to meet you, sir." Her father didn't offer his hand. Instead, he moved aside and gestured them in. "Let's get this over with." Inside, the tension hung like fog. The living room was modest, filled with books and the faint smell of lemon polish. Her mother brought out tea. Alder politely declined and asked for water instead. "What do you do exactly?" her father asked, settling into his chair like a judge behind a bench. "I build companies," Alder said. "Mostly in tech and design, but I've been shifting focus lately, trying to create things that last longer than a quarterly report." And you thought dating my daughter would be part of that?" "I didn't think it," Alder said calmly. "I felt it." Jessa's mother, who had remained silent until then, set down her cup. "You brought her that camera, didn't you? The Leica?" "Yes, ma'am," her father scoffed. "Trying to buy your way into her heart." "No," Alder said, not missing a beat. "I just wanted her to have something that honored what she does better than anyone else I've ever met." Jessa held her breath. Her father didn't speak for a full minute. Then finally, "She's always been stubborn, never took advice. Even as a kid." "That's because I knew what I wanted," she said quietly, "and I didn't," he admitted. "I thought keeping you on a certain path meant you'd be safe." "I wasn't meant for a path," Jessa said. "I was meant for what I built." Her father looked at Alder again, something softer behind his eyes now. "Don't hurt her." "I won't," Alder said, "because I'd never recover if I did." That night, as they drove back down the winding cliffs, Jessa turned toward him in the passenger seat. "I think he likes you." Alder kept his eyes on the road. "I think he's terrified of me, probably, but he saw it. What's real?" They didn't talk much after that. They didn't need to. Spring turned to summer. They hosted friends at the Napa house, held gallery fundraisers on the lawn, and spent lazy Sundays in bed with books and coffee, the windows flung open to the breeze. Alder worked less, but when he did, it was on something personal, a mentorship fund for young entrepreneurs who didn't come from privilege. He named it after his mother. Jessa continued to shoot, but now her work shifted into something more intimate. She began a new series, Stillness in Motion. It was about love in the margins, hands reaching in the dark, laughter caught mid-fall, the quiet way people looked at each other when they thought no one else was watching. One afternoon, she returned home from a shoot to find Alder in the garden, dirt under his nails, sleeves rolled up. He looked up when she approached. "You're planting." "Trying," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "I figured you might want lavender near the bedroom windows." She dropped her bag and kissed him, dirt and all. A week later, they stood on the same cliff where he'd first told her he didn't want to walk away. This time, he didn't have a bracelet, he had a ring. "I never planned on proposing," he said. "Not because I didn't want it, but because I thought you deserved to choose everything." She swallowed hard. "So why now?" "Because I finally realized I'm not offering you a life, I'm asking to build one with you." She didn't hesitate. Yes, the wedding was small, vineyard ceremony, barefoot on the grass. Her dress was simple silk and wind-kissed. He wore a navy suit, no tie, just his heart in his eyes. They danced under string lights, surrounded by the people who mattered. No press, no pretense, just them. Jessa's father walked her down the aisle. Mia cried through the vows, and when Alder kissed her, he held her like he'd never let go. Because he wouldn't. Years passed, the gallery grew. The mentorship fund launched 3 new businesses. They adopted a dog, then another. They bought a cottage in Italy. And every morning, without fail, Alder made her coffee black, 1 sugar, just how she liked it. They didn't live a perfect life. They lived a real one, and in all the stillness, all the motion, they never stopped choosing each other, over and over again. Always.